Once the most powerful member of the Anglican Church in Newcastle, Brian Farron, says he was under attack from within.
Well, they were out to get me.
The bishop today told the Royal Commission of hostile and vigorous attempts by senior Anglicans to bring him down.
I got this anonymous text on my phone saying, "Have a great holiday, come back and resign."
It came after Bishop Farron took action against priests over child sex allegations.
It's fair to say that you had a pretty difficult time during your tenure as a bishop.
I had a terrible time.
The Commission also heard claims supporters of former Dean Graham Lawrence were front and centre.
You're punishing Bishop Farron for bringing these allegations out into the light of day.
I'm not punishing him for that, I'm punishing him for the way it happened.
Former diocesan solicitor Robert Caddies was among several who complained against Bishop Farron. He took issue with making public the belief the late Father Peter Rushton was a child sex offender.
He brought the diocese into disrepute by claiming that Father Peter Rushton was a serial child abuser.
We now know that that's probably right, and I don't think we knew that at the time.
Caddies expressed disappointment over the 2012 defrocking of his good friend, the former Dean of Newcastle, Graham Lawrence. He claimed due process wasn't followed and Lawrence wasn't provided with legal aid. Caddies, along with several others, helping fund an appeal in the courts. Bishop Farron will continue giving evidence tomorrow. Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
Back in the spotlight and demanding attention.
What motivated you to come here and speak today?
500 local families out of work.
In front of a packed room on the opening day of the hearing, Nathan Tinkler used his 5-minute speech to tear shreds off the thoroughbred industry, Drayton South's main opponent.
You were quite scathing of the equine industry upstairs.
Yeah, no, well, I've invested heavily in it. So when I've been like these 500 families, I've been a victim of that, I suppose, horse media campaign, if you like. So, I'm certainly keen to stop that. 500 local families out of work, at high-paying jobs, over $100,000 a year. That's not easily replicated for any town or city, let alone a regional community.
Anglo American has confirmed it will sell the mine if it's approved. Today, Mr. Tinkler declared he has no financial interest in the project, despite the company he was formerly head of, Australian Pacific Coal, being talked about as a potential buyer. I'm
not involved in Australian Pacific Coal, so I don't know.
You've got a holding in it, obviously, though?
My family has a holding in it, yeah. But that's something for Australian Pacific Coal. I'm not involved with them.
As to who has been interested in this operation to date, that the sale process is really a confidential matter.
Mr. Tinkler's scathing comments were a stark contrast to the message sent by the mine's owners, Anglo American. In his address, Director Rick Fairhurst insisted that Drayton South can coexist with the equine industry.
It's come down to, seems to be a scenario of mining versus horse breeders. And I think that's a very unfortunate sort of perception.
Coexistence can't occur without boundaries. We need significant buffers between the two industries.
The hearing concludes tomorrow. A decision on Drayton South will be made by the Commission in the coming months. Samuel Jordan, NBN News.
Streets lined of vibrant green and perfectly manicured lawns. This is Huntly, and these are the faces of those behind its look. They're members of the Huntly Academy, which was officially launched today. It provides work for those who have long struggled to gain employment, as well as those with a disability.
People deserve those opportunities and the local community really needs it.
People like Paul Lane.
I was in retail for 22 years, worked for a major supermarket company. I was unemployed for 18 months.
What would you have done without it?
Probably still be sitting on my backside at home, I guess.
The initiative began as a contract for site maintenance. Now it employs 19 people, a figure that's expected to rise to 30 over the next year.
Started doing fencing work because every home comes with a fence. We started doing landscaping work because every home comes with a landscape. So we started working with the developer, identifying opportunities that we could utilise our guys for.
Meanwhile, work has started on the town centre. It's expected construction will get underway on the facilities in September next year. They include a shopping and medical centre, a childcare facility and family-friendly tavern. Emma Murphy, NBN News.
I want to have the committee have a close look at the interaction between Commonwealth and state regulation. It's making it far more complex, the listing procedure, but also delisting of species, and to see whether there's hope for delisting.
When people are in trouble, during adversity, when our community needs something, there's always a line to put their hand up, to volunteer, to help.
Ian Fife has been training with Newcastle all week, but paperwork confirming his commitment to the Jets is yet to be finalised. The club is confident it will be complete in time for Sunday's clash with the Mariners. Jason Hoffman is looking forward to the experienced defender joining him at the back.
To have someone who's a natural leader like Fifey come in, and obviously he can hopefully be cleared to help us this weekend, then it's going to be a huge boost for us in what's an important F3 derby. Regardless of whether or not he's match fit and he's in good shape or not, he reads the game extremely well and he'll cut down the work for himself.
Wayne Brown was on light duties again today. Likewise, backup keeper Pierce Clark, who is racing the clock to be right for the weekend. 15-year-old Noah James could be drafted in if Clark isn't past fit. Paddy Kilmurray, NBN News.
Take a look at Callanan. Important event for him. in retaining his top 10 spot so he can re-qualify on the championship tour.
She's a popular figure at Newcastle Cafe Burwood Bench. But Charlotte Pointing would love to give up her day job to pursue her real passion. Earlier this month, the 17-year-old created history across the ditch. After winning a special Trans-Tasman Women's Challenge, she then became the first female to claim an Aussie racing car race.
I got to the lead on lap 2 and I just put my head down and I drove hard, and I had Dad in my ears on the radio telling me that I was fine and that I had a big gap, and yeah, I just stayed consistent and it was the greatest feeling ever.
The former national go-kart champion made her debut in April. In a series that's not for the faint-hearted. Now comes the planning for next year.
Over the summer I'll be doing lots of training and lots of testing, and but mainly out looking for sponsors, as that's the biggest thing you need in motorsport. At the moment we're struggling, but we'd really like something big to come on board.
With Aaron Russell still negotiating a supercar seat for 2017, Pointing in the Aussie racing cars is currently the only Hunter driver confirmed for the Newcastle 500. Her ultimate goal is to one day compete in the main event.
Renee Gracie being in the V8 Supercar Series is such a great influence. She's a great role model. Same with Simona Di Silvestro, who's now just signed with Supercars. Like, they're awesome for the category, and it's really great to see girls getting into it.
Still clearly moved some 6 years after coming face to face with an abuse survivor.
I can still visualise the meeting. It was a pretty traumatic meeting for me.
Bishop Brian Farron close to tears at the Royal Commission as he recounted his 2010 meeting with CKA. CKA had previously told the Commission he was abused by a priest in the 1970s while he was an altar boy. That priest is now being investigated by police.
I had to excuse myself at one stage because I was really so upset. Anyhow, I heard his story and I apologised.
Giving evidence for a second day, he also described the backlash for his handling of abuse allegations within the church. Bishop Farron detailed a 2012 meeting with the abuse survivor known as CKH. Immediately after, he announced he would be defrocking the former Dean of Newcastle, Graham Lawrence, over allegations of child sexual abuse. Following the move, though, the Commission was told Farron was the subject of around 9 complaints, all of which were dismissed by the Episcopal Standards Board. The now retired bishop standing firm when questioned yet again over his relationship with Lawrence.
I was the bishop of the diocese. I had authority. I was certainly not intimidated by him. And I'd shown that I wasn't intimidated by any of these people by going and facing them. I'd gone to the congregation at Cook's Hill. I'd gone and faced the people at Terrigal. I'd faced the people at the cathedral. I had never stayed away from the cathedral. I faced those people. I was never intimidated by them.
Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
One year on from the fence going up, finally movement at the bogey hole.
Been a lot of investigation, obviously, to get it right.
Work began this week to reinforce the cliff above the pool. Hunter Base Ground Stabilisation Systems has won the tender to drill 15 bolts, each up to 7 metres long, into the rock face, similar to the work that's done above motorways.
We have a drilling rig. It's lowered down the cliff face. It's drilled in, grouted and anchored to stop the rock face from falling away.
45 metres of rock catch fencing will also be installed, along with new chain link fencing around the pool itself. Conditions like today make it clear just how challenging this project will be. Already works have been hindered by king tides, but the popular swimming spot is expected to be reopened by Christmas. But for some, it's not soon enough. The state government has previously claimed it was waiting on a final geotechnical report before making a decision on the site's future. The member for Newcastle, Tim Krakenthorpe, has previously said he was told by the department in July the report had been completed. Is that the case?
I'm not aware of that. Certainly the geotechnical investigation took some time as part of the process and can't confirm exactly when that was completed, but obviously we've been working hard to make sure that the approach that we are taking makes the community safe in using the site.
Samuel Jordan, NBN News. For a movement that has all of the cutting-edge safety equipment, a nod to the traditional.
It's then time to set up the red and yellow flags for everyone to swim between.
Performing his first reading today.
Yeah, well, I didn't know how that'd go, and I was a little bit anxious as to how those skills of mine would go.
Redhead's Boyd Conrick has released the first book created in partnership with Surf Life Saving. For the former elite triathlete, it's also the first book he's ever written.
It was only though when I had children myself a few years ago and I started reading them children's books that I started to see that there was perhaps a void in quality children's book education on water safety.
This is our future, and if we don't look after them, we aren't going to have happy, healthy people that will come and exercise at the beach.
It tells the story of Lizzie and Luke, two volunteer lifesavers.
With water splashing in their faces, they paddle hard until they are all safely back to shore.
Designed to impart those crucial skills on the younger generation.
Where's the important place to swim at the beach?
In between the flags.
What colour flag?
Red and yellow.
Excellent. I sort of set about to just bring something to life that appealed to children but reinforce that safety message.
Books can be purchased online. Samuel Jordan, NBN News.
A rude and rather unexpected awakening.
Completely shocked that there was, it looks like an earthquake's happened.
Not quite, but this sinkhole opened up just as quick and left residents rattled. None more though than Simon West, whose dream parked proved more of a nightmare.
5 o'clock this morning, the water main burst underneath, and at about 6 o'clock, it fell into the hole below it.
Resting headfirst in a 2-metre deep hole, there was no reversing out of this one. While the car was removed from the sinkhole by around 10 a.m, the 38 residents here along Albert Street will be without water for much of the morning. Repair work is currently underway. That's expected to take several hours, and then there's the clean-up. A far cry from this sinkhole in Japan perhaps, crews taking just 2 days to repair it. Workers here moved quickly though, water was back on by the afternoon.
Certainly on behalf of Hunter Water, I apologise to the people who have been inconvenienced. There'll be an automatic credit to the people, the 38 properties who have lost water this morning on their next water bill.
Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
Day one of pre-season for North Queensland, and the focus was on an 18-year-old who's played just 2 games in the NRL. Kalen Ponga has reportedly agreed to a long-term deal with the Knights worth around $3 million.
It's early days, so there's a cooling off period, but we expect Kalen to go there. So, look, we're disappointed, but we've got a big picture in mind. We've got a plan in place.
Cowboys coach Paul Green says Ponga's departure will allow his club to retain its high-profile stars. He admits North Queensland couldn't match the package Newcastle is offering.
If it was going to come down to money, we were probably never going to really be in the hunt if that's what was the most important thing, and I'm not saying that is.
There's speculation the Knights want the teenager to join them straight away. For now, Green is standing firm.
He's still a contracted player. He's part of our plans. He's part of our squad, so yeah.
Newcastle coach Nathan Brown wasn't willing to clarify the situation.
Browning, plenty of talk about Kalen Ponga. What can you tell us?
No comment on that one, sorry.
He did admit there's room in first grade for a specialist number 1, effectively leaving the door open for Ponga.
Obviously, fullback's the spot we're definitely looking at. Rossi could play there, Dylan Pithian could play there, Pete Mataudia. We'll look at a number of options in the shorter term, but we're not 100% sure at the moment.
Meanwhile, Brown says there's still a chance Jared Mullen could spend time at hooker next season. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. He's been associated with the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games since before the city formalised its bid, so it's only fitting Kurt Fearnley has been chosen as an ambassador.
This is going to be the best games that we've seen in decades. It's so unique. It's going to be so family friendly. It's fun, the surf, the sun. There's nothing that you can't promote, I guess, with these games.
Son Harry wanted to share the spotlight this morning. In just over 500 days, all eyes will be on Dad as he looks to add to his Commonwealth medal tally of 1 gold and 1 silver.
About 500 metres up there, I take the final left-hand turn into what could be, what could be my last ever time in the green and gold. That experience is going to make this city even more special to me.
Fearnley says he's a huge fan of the Paralympics forging its own identity. But there's something special about the Commonwealth Games featuring both disabled and able-bodied athletes.
You end up making friends across the board, and you see the biggest stars in the Commonwealth taking a knee to a guy who, from developing nations where people with disabilities are they are the most marginalised, and they're sitting down with your Usain Bolts.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
This is the tackle which set the tone and the rivalry between the Jets and Mariners.
Going back right to the beginning in the first game when Andrew Durante broke his leg, when Nick Merger broke his leg in the World Club Championship, that's the rivalry really started in the first game.
There's been some epic derbies since. Packed stadiums, players etched in time, and moments fans will never forget. Laurie McKenna has seen a few.
Hopefully there are going to be a few tackles. That the crowd want to get that excitement and that banter going again, and I just think the games have went a bit soft over the last few years.
It's only round 7, but the Jets and Mariners are placed 8th and 9th on the ladder respectively.
If you're going to do anything in the league and get in that top 6, you have to win games like this. Teams that are going to be down the bottom, you need to win them, and this is a must-win game for us.
McKenna has confirmed the Jets want to bolster their current roster in the January transfer window, but need some underperforming players to make way.
Martin's came out through the week and said he's willing to invest more money, but we've got a full roster unless players can move off that roster and get the opportunity. So boys who are not playing now, who have got the opportunity to move and get a gig somewhere else, we'd be open to look at that so we can bring in other players.
forgetful and at times uncomfortable.
Are you getting irritated with me, Mr.
No,
Lawrence?
I'm not getting irritated with you.
Former priest Graham Lawrence giving evidence at the Royal Commission, denying he protected pedophile priests during his time as Dean of Newcastle Cathedral.
Is it right or is it wrong that you were a go-to person in the diocese for priests who were accused of child sexual abuse?
That is wrong.
Lawrence was stripped of his holy orders in 2012 after allegations of child sex abuse were levelled against him, as well as claims he was part of a gang of 3 within the diocese, which kept allegations of child sex abuse secret. Claims he denies. In a heated afternoon of evidence, Lawrence said former Newcastle Bishop Roger Hurft never raised child sex abuse allegations with him. At one point, he even suggested efforts by police to contact him about allegations against a priest were a hoax.
Are you seriously suggesting in your evidence today that you thought this telephone call was some kind of hoax?
Yes.
That's just not believable, is it,
I'm
Mr.
sorry, but
Lawrence?
it's true, ma'am.
And despite his defrocking occurring back in 2012, there still remains elements within the diocese which are critical of Graham Lawrence's removal. The current Assistant Bishop of Newcastle, Peter Stewart, today labelling those elements as virulent and harsh.
Church circles?
Never had to work with a group that is as difficult and as intractable and as hurtful as this group of people.
The hearing continues in Sydney on Wednesday. Mike Lorrigan, NBN News.
After 18 months of hard work, the River Royal Inn is back open for business. It was feared the historic pub, one of the oldest in the country, would never recover after it was severely damaged in the cyclonic storm that hit the Hunter in April last year. But the town has a new hero in Singleton's Dale McNamara, who put his hand up to foot the bill for the rebuild.
It was doomed never to reopen based on the amount of water went through it. When I talking to builders and different people, it was just going to be a really difficult job to take on. So it was a job that I took on myself, and and here we are today.
The transformation is hard to believe. From a state of disrepair to this, the risk clearly paying off. From humble beginnings in the 1800s, this pub has long been a meeting place for locals. The fact it's been able to reopen, a relief for all those who live here.
They're really happy to see that the hotel's opened again, back to its former glory, which is what a lot of them have been hoping to see.
Emma Murphy, NBN News.
We had a lot of comedies this year, and you know, we want to make it a happy event, and we want everyone to feel good. And it's you know, it's going to be a great weekend.
Mark Jones lost 5 defenders in 6 weeks. When he found out experienced centre-back Ian Fife was available, he picked up the phone.
Pretty much I got a call from the head coach and Jonesy and just asked if I could come in and help out a little bit. Obviously, you know, the situation with you guys is just, you know, real tough.
Fife says the decision to accept the Jets' offer was easy. While he has business interests in South Australia, he couldn't pass up the chance to return to the A-League. He hasn't played in 6 weeks, but he's not worried.
It's all confidence, you know, body-wise, you know, I might be 34, but I've got the body of a 24-year-old. I know that in terms of injuries and soft tissue stuff, I've never had a problem with things like that. With age, you gain a little bit more experience to know when to push your boundaries and when not to.
Nice to have some experience there, so if we can get away with Fife and Canner at the middle of the back there, then obviously gives us some experience and hopefully we start the game well.
Jones hopes Fife will last 60 minutes. In that time, his communication and organisation will be vital. His stint in Newcastle is short-term, but both coach and player are open to extending the stay.
Yeah, if he was 5 years younger, 100% he'd have been here for sure, but it's just a case of seeing how he pulls up in the next few weeks. If he can get through this period, if he does well, then yeah, certainly, you know, ball's in his court.
Especially when you get to your 30s, you play game by game. If anything comes from that, I'll be happy to look into that for sure.
Jones has been happy with his side's shape and structure in their previous 2 matches, but disappointed with one-on-one efforts.
It's about us capitalising on opportunities and, you know, again, going back to the first 2 games, we conceded 1 goal and, you know, we've conceded 8 goals in the following 4, so that's not good enough.
As it's probably well reported, there's a lot of good players and marquee players off contract at 18, and I think all the managers and the players have obviously deliberately done that because of the change in the salary cap.
I didn't expect 3 awards tonight. I knew going into the awards night I had some tough competitors, but I'm really happy with the results that I've come out with tonight.
It's the trip of a lifetime, commemorating sacrifices made a lifetime ago.
If we can imbue that into the spirit of the 19 footballers, then we are keeping the spirit alive.
In less than a week, this group will retrace the steps of their ancestors, returning to the Western Front for a football tour to commemorate the 34th Battalion. For Cameron Innes, it's a personal pilgrimage.
I had a relative on my mother's side who he was actually caught in a prisoner of war camp and he was lucky enough to escape.
The 34th Battalion has great significance locally. 65 footballers enlisted from the Hunter. Sadly, 50 never made it home.
A flag with the list of the footballers who have passed, who have fought in France and died, to honour their sacrifice, but also to honour the football clubs they came from here in the Hunter Valley.
Players plan on using that emotion to fuel their efforts on the field, with 11 matches to be played throughout the 14-day trip.
A lot of excitement, there's a different feel amongst us all, and we're all just buzzing to get out there and play, I think. We really know what it means now to have links to people in the 34th Battalion.
Sally Rafferty, NBN News. For Talia Stanley, every day brings a new discovery.
I felt very nervous because this is my very first time surfing.
Watching the 9-year-old tackle the waves today, it's hard to believe just over 12 months ago her life changed forever, losing part of her arm in a dog attack. And while the road to recovery has been long, today was a chance for some fun.
Adjusting to our new normal and trying to make life as beautiful as we can.
Talia's unwavering determination, inspirational to those closest to her.
She's teaching us all so much about how if you're positive and your brain is strong and you have you keep trying, you can achieve what you would like to achieve.
Talia was just one of many given the chance to experience the thrill today as part of a Disabled Surfers Association event. And the organisation certainly struck true to its motto, putting plenty of smiles on dials.
We get smiles from the people with a disability and their families and their carers, and we certainly get it on our volunteers. The people that are getting infected are down there now in a blue shirt because they will come back.
An army of young volunteers has helped bolster the ranks, but without government support, the organisation is totally reliant on the community. Now it has its sights set on purchasing a new beach wheelchair and a purpose-built board. Organisers hoping a fundraising event in December will go some way to making that happen. Sally Rafferty, NBN News.
We always say if it gets hard, then it's hard for victims of violence and families of violence. So if they can do what they do to get through, then we can ride up a big hill.
In previous years, the majority of Jets W League home games were scheduled separately to the men. This year, all games will be played as double headers. It's a progressive move by the Newcastle Jets and Northern New South Wales Football, which is being applauded by the players.
It's been a long time coming. I think the women's game in general is growing, and I think it's only fair that the women should get to showcase their talent on a quality pitch and in front of a home crowd.
This is what the girls are looking forward to most, playing in a great stadium with some great fans and being paired as a doubleheader with the guys. It is the game that we've been waiting for.
Import Aaron Gilliland has scored her first goal for the Jets and is enjoying the move to the midfield.
I get to touch the ball all the time. It's a little different from outside back in the NWSL, so I'm liking it. I get to distribute, I get to attack, I get to defend, I get to do all of it, so I like it a lot.
Scoring goals last year was something that we lacked, and it's great to see that the squad that we've put together this season has improved that.
James Nitties was being described in the media as an Aussie battler, a golfer who has played on the PGA Tour but spent the past few seasons trying to get back on it.
We've seen the trials and tribulations of the last couple of years, the mini tours in the States, the Pro-Ams. You sort of feel like you're back where you belong because we know how much talent you do possess.
Yeah, look, I didn't want that to come up as a hard luck story because, I love my life, I love playing golf.
The shock leader at the halfway mark, trying to enjoy the moment and maintain his lead.
Half of these guys in this field this week, all like me, we've been up there before, and it's a rough time sometimes. And then when you reap the benefits and actually play well in big events, it feels really good. So it gives it back to you.
It started well for the Charlestown pro, who birdied the first to move to 10 under. But with the field breathing down his neck, pressure was mounting. The first blemish on his card came at the 5th. From there, it was a struggle. 4 more bogeys before pulling one back with a clutch putt at the last. She won the battle she never wanted to fight.
I don't really remember what happened to me when I was little, but Mum talks about it and she gets tears in her eyes whenever she talks about it to me.
Now 19, Cassie Skeen is a meningococcal disease survivor.
I don't want anybody to go through what I had to watch my little girl go through.
Nor does Nancy Lee Kerr. Her daughter Kimberly only just made it through.
We got to the hospital, we got into intensive care, and they gave me an hour. There wasn't anything else they could do for her.
Sharing a bond forged under the most difficult of circumstances, they've come together calling for change, joining a national chorus to have the vaccine for the B strain of the disease placed on the national program, something that's already happened for the C strain.
If it doesn't, I'm worried there's going to be more and more cases of the B. And I mean, we've shown with the C strain how much of a significant drop there has been in the number of cases.
This year, there's been 9 confirmed cases of meningococcal disease in the Hunter, the same as last year. 11 people contracted the disease in 2014, while in 2011, 15 people had to be treated. The Pharmaceutical Benefits Advisory Committee ultimately decides whether the B strain vaccine is placed on the PBS. To date, there's been 3 applications made by the drug manufacturer, and on each time it's been knocked back, the medical experts simply not convinced of its effectiveness.
It's not a nice disease at all, and it doesn't forgive, it doesn't pick, discriminate.
Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
Plenty of reason to celebrate, particularly for Jeff Thornley, the Foundation President of Sailability Toronto. Today watched the group's new boat hit the water named after him.
It is an incredible honour. I was lost for words when it happened. It's come as a complete surprise.
But certainly not to others. Evan Starling was the first to sail the latest edition.
Without Jeff's support and knowledge and just his enthusiasm, we wouldn't have got as far as we have with Sailbilly Toronto.
Launched by local MPs Joel Fitzgibbon and Greg Piper this morning, it's the service's 13th boat, but by far the most technologically advanced, all controlled by this joystick. A sign of just how far sailability has come in 6 years since Mr Thornley moved north from Sydney, having run a similar initiative there.
I came to the conclusion that there was really a need for a similar program here.
That's been proven. Each month they make 100 trips out on the water. New boats secured, they're now looking for volunteer instructors to help keep the project going.
Let's get them out on the water, out into the open air, out with a challenge, out with the ability to get a new skill. We'll teach them to sail to the best of their intellectual and physical capacity.
Samuel Jordan, NBN News. After a blistering third round which saw him climb right into contention, Jake Higginbottom wasn't holding back. He chose the driver off the opening tee, but found himself stuck on the beach. After opening with a bogey, James Nitties pulled one back on the very next hole. A mid-range putt that would boost anyone's confidence. The remainder of his front nine was blemish-free, but bogeys on the back would sink his chances. Playing partner Adam Scott had a slightly better day. It was an up-and-down final round for Higginbottom. Despite being on the wrong side of the card, he finished with a nice putt to cap off his Open. A big hit early on with keeper Kelsey Weiss injured less than 10 minutes in. Claire Coelho entered the fray with a big task on her hands. The girls up front were creating chances, and when Jen Hoy was brought down in the box, brought in to score goals, Hoy didn't disappoint, scoring her first for the Jets. The Jets nearly extended their advantage in the 88th minute. A late chance almost saw the Glory equalise, but Newcastle held on. Coelho's heroics in goal earning her player of the match.
Their anguish is clear, their pain very real. And the one thing Zach Barnes's parents want right now is to hear their son's voice again.
We just want a phone call.
It's 8 days since the 19-year-old disappeared, and with each day, this family's pain grows.
It's not even real. Like, you know, you're at work and then you come home and you sit there, your body bashing back tears.
Yeah, they've been heartbreaking.
That's the worst fear that we can have. Are we ever going to see him again?
Especially for his best mate, Matt, the last person to see him.
He means everything to me.
Zach was last seen on Sunday the 13th, when suddenly and without warning he left Matt and ran into bushland near Trip Close at Thornton.
We didn't have a fight with him, you know, there was no arguments, it was just gone.
Those closest to Zach want him to know he's not being forgotten.
Let someone know you're out there, let us know you're safe.
Zach is 180 to 185 centimetres tall and has a noticeable tattoo on his right calf. Anyone who can help is asked to come forward. Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
It's a city undergoing a transformation, and the developments keep coming. The latest, road upgrades, including widening and the addition of turning lanes, as Transport for New South Wales moves towards introducing light rail. Stewart Avenue and Hannell Street and the intersections of Hunter and Steele and King and Derby Streets will be the focus of works, impacting on 110 car parking spaces.
There is always a perceived parking constraint. Some of the studies that we've seen suggest that there's some peak times when parking is in more demand than others.
A major study is underway into parking and should be released around Christmas. It'll identify possible solutions to help Newcastle Council plan for future needs. The Baird government says it understands parking is an important issue, but the end game is about making it easier for more people to access the city.
Our overall objective is to deliver a public transport system that is significantly better than Newcastle's ever had before.
Light rail construction is scheduled to start next year as part of the $510 million Newcastle Revitalisation Project.
A little off the beaten track, but worth it. Relatively untouched parcels of land near Minmai that, after a long fight, will stay that way. It follows an 18-year conservation battle waged by Brian Perdue and the Green Corridor Coalition.
Exhausted. It's been something that you think's going to happen quickly, but it never does.
More than 2,000 hectares owned by Coal and Allied have been handed to the state government and turned into national parks, filling in the so-called missing link in a green corridor from the Wadigan Mountains right through to Port Stephens. The land includes Minmai's Tank Paddock, 146 hectares where wetlands meet dry forest that were once on the verge of being handed to a developer.
We are extremely happy that that land is now fully protected in national parks as well. I have seen development in Western Newcastle just bulldoze all the bush. And if we hadn't have got this, the bulldozers would have kept going.
Kate Haberfield, NBN News. It looked fairly innocuous at first, a chance on goal for Finnish import Alexander Koko. But it ended in a fractured jaw, another Jets casualty expected to be on the sidelines for up to a month. It's hoped Andrew Naboo won't join him. Still limping at a recovery session this morning. He'll have an MRI on his ankle but should be okay.
He'll live, he's all right.
The Jets were left to rue a host of missed chances. Mark Jones scathing of his team's performance in the first half.
Biggest issue at the moment is turning the ball over, and if we don't do that, we're a good football team.
That showed in the second. Newcastle dominated the tail end of the match against a 10-man Mariners. Morten Nordstrand's equaliser, hopefully a sign of more to come.
You saw what he can do, and I've seen at training what he can do. He's a magnificent player, and like I said, he's our Ninkovic, so to speak.
It's a tough stretch ahead for the Jets, starting with Melbourne victory on Saturday. The stand-in skipper is looking for an improved performance.
If you don't start well or you have bad periods in the game, then any team can punish you at any minute. So we need to concentrate for 90 minutes and perform for 90 minutes.
Kate Haberfield, NBN News.
Born and bred on the Central Coast, this is as close to family and friends that Cos Jason can get.
I'm just trying to find a place, so if there's any real estate agents, trying to buy a place, so let me know. It's quite difficult at the moment. I'm buying a home, not a house. So that is something that I'd like to set up in Newcastle for a long period of time. Both me and my missus like it here, and it's close to family.
After 2 seasons at the Storm, he spent the next 4 at the Cowboys, winning a premiership in 2015. Despite being part of successful systems in Melbourne and North Queensland, he says signing with the Wooden Spooners wasn't a hard decision.
Part of the decision to come back here was to do something more for her as well and get closer to our family and start to do some things outside of footy that we both want to do.
Cos Jason had off-season surgery on a hernia and his elbow and expects to return to full training after Christmas. He's played alongside Kalen Ponga, who the Knights have reportedly signed for 5 years from 2018.
Anyone that knows Kalen, whether that's outside of footy or one of his teammates, they just want to see what's best for Kalen and hope he's happy and enjoying his footy because he's a very talented guy and he's a really good person.
To be able to finish off the season with a first and a second and to be equal on points here is great for our team. It gives us a lot of confidence as a sailing team.